Okay, today we've got another Indonesian running shoe review. We've got the Ortuseight Hypersonic 2 in for some full thoughts. We've had this one for about 2 weeks now, done about 50 Ks of running, some speed sessions, easy runs, getting into some longer runs as well. So I think I'm now ready to share my full thoughts. As always, we'll go through things from top to bottom, chat about the price points and comparisons, let you know what I really think, because there is not a lot of English information out there about these shoes, and you might have seen these floating around and wanted to know what these are actually about. So starting off with some specs, a little bit tricky to find information as always with some of these brands, but I have come up with the numbers of 38.5 mil of foam in the heel, coming down to 31.5 in the forefoot. There's a couple of different graphics out there. A lot of them don't make sense, but I would say we have around a 7 or 8 mil drop, at least based on the feel of the shoe, but that can be slightly altered by removing this training insole, leaving us with this stitched in footbed. So pretty much you get a little bit more softness with the training insole, a little bit of extra stack. Taking that out would mean that you would have around 36.5 in the heel, coming down to 29.5 in the forefoot, I would have to guess. Somewhere around that. I don't think it makes a heap of difference, but this does shave 12 grams off the weight, taking it from 254 grams down to 242 grams. So that is a cool little feature there. I think that there is some room for technology like this from other brands out there as well. You could chuck something like a Pebax midsole or insole in over the top of your racing shoe to give it a bit more comfort for the speed sessions, then pop that out to lose a bit of weight and give you a bit more of a kind of, I guess, snappy, aggressive feel come race day. In terms of the foam setup, we apparently have a Pebax foam here, which is their Alto Stratus compound. It's quite soft, quite compressive, does feel a little bit like a supercritical EVA, but I'm going to trust the fact that it is a Pebax foam. And then we have a stiff carbon plate running through the midsole, although I do think that it breaks in over the course of the run and it does become pretty flexible by the end. Starting off with the upper of this shoe, it is very stripped down, very racy, which I think probably led to my initial confusion about this being a dedicated race shoe compared to a speed trainer, which it is. Moving into a race day shoe, I guess, if you want a more comfortable experience, but I thought this was the top line racing shoe. It turns out that it's actually the Solar, not the Hypersonic 2, but you can probably see my confusion here. Very, very stripped down, pretty much completely transparent, which I think is awesome. Heel counter has next to no structure, which I don't mind. I think it still locks down really nicely. Very well padded, no room for blisters there. The tongue, I think, is executed well also. Oftentimes with these elasticated booty style tongues, you do get a lot of like scrunching of the upper, but I think they've given us just enough width for it to be comfortable and stretch to accommodate your foot, but not so much that it's bagging together if you have a slightly more narrow foot. In terms of the sizing, I have gone true to size with an EU 44, which usually translates to a US 10, but in this case a 10.5, which is convenient. So this has worked out quite nicely. I would say the fit is true to size as far as EU sizing goes, so I float between EU 44, 44.5. This works quite nicely here in the 44, a little bit of room ahead of the toes, and the fit, I would say, is a little bit on the roomier side as far as super shoes go, especially through that midfoot area. Quite a nice shaped toe box there. Maybe a little bit of a squeeze through the midfoot, but nothing crazy. Overall, the lockdown is good. The serrated laces stay in place nicely. It's breathable, it's comfortable, no blisters. Can't ask for much more, especially from a training shoe. I was impressed by this, thinking that it was a full-blown racer. To have this in a training model, I think is even more impressive. Moving down to the midsole, my experience hasn't been quite as solid. I think I've been a bit confused by this shoe. First off, thinking that it was a full-blown racing shoe, to then changing my expectations to a speed trainer. But even then, I felt that I was not really getting the ride that I wanted from a dedicated speed shoe. On the run, I felt like I was sinking a little bit too hard into the midfoot section of this foam, kind of sinking down into it and really struggling to get up out of it once I was there. I don't think the plate shape is quite right for the softness of foam that they have back here, especially with the cavity as well. It really allows for a lot of compression of that midsole foam, and so it kind of led to this negative drop feeling and the plate just wasn't really giving me that kind of guidance or stiffness that I needed to really get up out of it. That led to a little bit of calf discomfort, and it just gave me this feeling that I couldn't really thump into the ground with the force that I wanted to push up into threshold and above. Marathon pace, fantastic. 3:45 per kilometer, sorry. Felt awesome. I could really cruise along. It had a feel which was somewhat reminiscent of a Wave Rebellion Pro, or probably a Wave Rebellion Flash too, I would say, where you could really focus on hitting that midfoot section and it wasn't going too deep to become an issue, and then you could transition through the rest of the shoe quite nicely. But as soon as I tried to pick up the turnover, really thump into the ground with a bit of force, I did just feel that kind of mushiness, which I'm not really a fan of. And this does play into that conversation that I often have around speed trainers being a little bit too comfort focused these days. I said the same thing about the Zoom Fly 6. Really enjoyed that shoe for tempo runs, marathon pace, and slower, so easy runs, you know, up tempo daily training, getting into longer runs. I think these kind of shoes go really well. But for pushing intervals, I just don't really think the softness of this shoe really works, at least for me. There's going to be people who like the SC Trainer V3, they like the Zoom Fly 6 for running fast. They're definitely going to get along with this, and I think this could be a fantastic marathon option for a lot of people as well, because it is very straightforward, is pretty intuitive in the way that it runs, and I think it is reasonably stable as well, with a good amount of surface area as far as racing shoes go as well. But for me, I was just a little bit confused about what this shoe was meant to be. My first run, I would say, was probably my favorite. I think the plate hadn't yet broken in, so it had the stiffness to kind of continue the rocker all the way through my stride. But by the time that I put a few more runs into it and those runs got longer, I felt like the plate almost warmed up to the point where halfway through the run, I could really feel the plate flexing, but it wasn't holding the shape of the rocker that I needed to get through the rest of my stride. The first K of each run felt, or K or two, felt really good, but once it broke in, once the foam softened up, I didn't enjoy it quite as much. Overall, I think that for me, if I had my time again, I would have taken this shoe straight into up-tempo daily training, long runs with a little bit of marathon pace here and there. I wouldn't have been taking it into 400 meter repeat sessions or trying to take it for 2x3K at threshold. I just don't really think it's built for that. But overall, as a speed trainer these days, there's definitely going to be people who like that feel. Just didn't really work for me personally. Moving down to the outsole, we've got pretty much full coverage rubber where it matters for me. We have a big strip which covers the outside lateral edge of the outsole. Full coverage in the forefoot. Fairly aggressive lugs here. I would say that the rubber itself is not the stickiest. I had a bit of problems this morning on some wet, slightly cobbly footpaths with it slipping, but on most surfaces it did grip reasonably. Yeah, it was okay. We do have a bit of a chasm here, which has been known to catch a few rocks or some gum nuts, but not the biggest issue if you are running on true roads. And I do appreciate the attention to detail here with a little bit of a silicone patch over the carbon plate to stop that being damaged, I suppose. But I would like to see that here as well, because that is also a bit of a risk factor. Can already see a little bit of chipping in there from a rock or two, and it is also just an uncomfortable sound to hear the carbon plate scratching as you're running along. So outsole, decent enough, hasn't been wearing down a heap, but wet weather performance, probably not its strong point. Coming around to the price point, bit different here. This is in Indonesian rupiah. It's coming in for 1,430,000 rupiah, which translated to Australian is coming in around $133, which after all that I've said is just downright fantastic. I would buy this shoe again for $133. That is just awesome value. I think if you're traveling in Indonesia and you are chasing a soft, smooth, long run, daily trainer, something that can push into kind of tempo zones, maybe you want to collect a bit of marathon pace towards the end of your long run, this is a fantastic shoe to grab. Or if you are okay with running in shoes which are a bit softer, a bit bigger, you like a kind of big speed trainer, which is not really my preference, but if you like it, a shoe like this could work quite nicely. And to have that for less than half the price of a lot of alternatives like an SC Trainer, it's half the price of the Zoom Fly 6, I think it is an awesome option to consider. It is a little bit tricky to get it over here in Australia or wherever else you are in the world. It is a bit tricky to get the shipping right. You have to buy through a few apps like Shopee and everything else like that. So oftentimes the shipping can be a bit too expensive to make it worth it. But if you're traveling in Bali like everybody is, or you go to Indonesia for travel, visit, go have a look in some of the Indonesian running stores and see if you can try on a few shoes like this one here. Rounding things out, there is a couple of shoes which I think are worth comparing to. The first is the Zoom Fly 6 from Nike. I think they're pretty similar in their attitude in terms of being a bit softer, a bit more mellow. The carbon plates in both of them have a bit more flex, especially after this one has warmed up on the run. It's gone quite stiff now, really surprised me because it felt so flexible on the move. I think the main difference here is that you get a bit more padding in the upper of the Zoom Fly 6, fairly similar in terms of the fit, maybe a bit more room in the Zoom Fly, bit more foam here, bit more of a kind of, I guess, stable base, but I do think you get a bit more pop from the Pebax foam here, assuming that's what it is, although it is still quite soft. Grip on both similar levels. I think the rubber in the forefoot here is maybe a little bit more sticky. I would say I would probably choose the Hypersonic 2 for marathon pace stuff, but I might go for the Zoom Fly 6 for a full-on long run where I'm trying to get up into that kind of 2-hour zone. I think it's just got a little bit more protection to it. Maybe a little bit less rocketed, but a little bit more protection to it. Another one to compare to is the Mizuno Neo Vista 2, which I think is quite similar in terms of that booty style upper, the softness of the foam, the kind of rocketed geometry as well. I think the key difference here though is that with a bit more foam underfoot and with a slightly wider base, I think the force that you put into this shoe is better distributed, meaning that you don't over compress it and have to really work to get back up out of it, at least for most paces. I think these are both operating in the same kind of playing field for me. I wouldn't use these for anything faster than marathon pace, now having worn both. But I think that the Neo Vista is just a little bit more effective. It doesn't over compress through that midfoot area, meaning that you have to do extra work. I do think this is a little bit lighter, a little bit more nimble, but yeah, ironically, I do think the Neo Vista 2 can handle pace just that little bit better than the Hypersonic 2. And then I guess rounding things out, we have another shoe from an Indonesian brand, the Enepro Zenith from Mills Running, which I think is just released over in Indonesia. This has a dual density supercritical EVA midsole. That's what I'm going to say, not knowing the specs just yet, with a carbon frame in the middle. This is a fair bit heavier, it's a fair bit firmer, has a later stage rocker, less compression to the foam, but I do find that makes for a nice, stable, comfortable, kind of super trainer vibe in terms of the level of protection that you're getting underfoot. It's not super bouncy, it doesn't really feel super in that way, but the protection that you get from such a big broad base, a nice late stage rocker, I think is quite nice. The Hypersonic 2 is a completely different vibe. It's much softer, it's much smoother. It's a fair bit lighter as well. I think this is up around that 300 gram mark, whereas 240, 250 grams is definitely more competitive for that speed trainer zone. But in terms of my preferences, I actually found myself leaning more towards the Enepro Zenith for my everyday stuff, long runs, just because I did find that softness a little bit of a hassle. Neither of these shoes are perfect for me for running fast. This is a bit too heavy, bit too bulky, and then this is a little bit too soft, kind of falling in a weird spot. But both have their spots for different preferences, I would say. If you like firmer shoes, you want a bit more stability, Enepro Zenith as that dense, durable super trainer. And then if you like softer, smoother, you like a bit more compression through your stride, then the Hypersonic 2 will probably be more up your street. So yeah, overall my experience in the Ortuseight Hypersonic 2 has been a bit confusing. It's taken a bit of time for me to work out exactly what this shoe is for. And I guess a lot of the things that I dislike about the way that the shoe rides comes from the fact that I was probably using it wrong for my preferences. If I had my time again, as I said before, I would have gone straight to the long run, settled into some easy runs, bit of marathon pace here and there, rather than trying to take it for speed sessions altogether. But then also, I do think that there is something to be said for the fact that it looks so much like a racing shoe, for the fact that it advertises that it can push into race distances. So yeah, overall, Can't really decide whether it's me just misunderstanding the shoe or whether something's a little bit off about the way that it's been marketed. But overall, there's going to be some people who like a shoe like this, just not quite right for me right now.